Hello, hello, and welcome. We are so excited to share this first episode of season 2. Today's conversation is one that we think you are going to be sitting at the edge of your seat for. Matt Tabor has spent more than 2 decades coaching and advising executives and boards on how to build organizations that last. Through his work at BCGN Group, Matt helps leaders move beyond quarterly management to imagine and actually build the future. And lately, his focus has turned to something that's reshaping leadership itself, the rise of AI inside our teams. And I don't have to tell you, I think we are in a moment here as companies are staring down AI implementations with varying degrees of speed and success, but not a lot is being said about the impact on humans and teams at work. Now, in this episode, we talk about what happens when AI stops becoming a tool and starts becoming an autonomous teammate, what skills leaders and teams will need next, and what 3 things we need to be working on now to be ready for this world of hybrid work. This is part 1 of a 2-part conversation about courage, curiosity, while we're at the doorstep of change. And I think you'll walk away both challenged and hopeful about what's possible for teams in this next chapter of work. Here's our conversation with Matt Tabor.
Matt Tabor, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thanks for having me.
hi. Yeah, it's so great to have you. Matt, I remember the very first time that I met you, and I was waiting for this episode to share because I'm sure you don't remember, but we had a conversation about how to help leaders, and you told me every single day when I am in the room with these people, if I don't feel today is the day that I'm going to get fired, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, I absolutely remember that conversation. And just so you know, I've had that a few more times, but I truly believe that what we do for a living has a massive leverage for both businesses and for leaders so they can grow and develop and move on in their career, but most importantly for the teams. If we're not willing as that third party holder of that team in the moment to call the hard issue, we can add some value, and that can be great value, but in the end, you want to have that big change value. So I always appreciated the fact that you did do that and you did fly by the seat of your pants and call the shots. It's really important for us to remember as practitioners that we have to be able to play at that.
Yes, and that is where I want to go today, along other things with this conversation. How to become the trusted advisor that I've seen you being in many of those conversations, in many rooms where really key decisions are happening. And to make it a little bit more specific, how do we speed up to meet the pace and the demands of technology? What is changing? And of course, what's on everybody's mind, which is AI these days.
So just real quick, backing up, first of all, thank you for giving me that level of credibility, or at least extending that to me. But when I'm in rooms like that, I think there's 2 things that let me be in the room is the confidence and reputation that our work done well brings, but also just knowledge of the business and the actual business issues and the context of what's trying to occur in that moment. I mean, if you have those 2 things, and as you walk in and you put our practitioner hat on, you start noticing what's missing. You start noticing what is being over relied upon, what's being oversaid or not mentioned. And it's like a puzzle piece. It starts to come together for you and a pattern starts to emerge. And I think for me in my practice, and when I've had the biggest successes that have, I think, driven the most business impact and human impact, it's been about finding that one puzzle piece that just was the wrong color, hasn't been fit in yet, right? Or wasn't fully understood with data, and helping a team really focus on that, then pull back and recognize why they hadn't focused on it before. So not only are they seeing the gap and addressing the gap, but they're also seeing how can they fix and build a system in the future that can get them there in the future. And honestly, Angela and Corey, the most important piece is be willing to stand up and say, stop, this isn't working. When you can do that with confidence, you then can start building good outcomes, but also a reputation of thinking and leaning forward with people. So you will be called back in to help solve the next hard problem. You mentioned AI, and that's a place I've been spending a lot of my time lately, like everyone else. But I have been seeing some things play out in rooms with teams and leaders that are pretty interesting. And then working in the last company I was in, which is Zendesk, which was a SaaS customer experience company that was primary focus is AI agents in delivering their solutions through AI and producing higher levels of resolution for customers at a much better price point and a much better quality point, and they're getting there. So a couple of years working at Zendesk, I saw a lot of how AI was truly impacting both the strategy, the speed of thinking, the dollars behind the thinking, then also how it affected our organization and tools that we chose to use or not use, and then ways we started seeing this rapid acceleration occur, not only on teams, but across teams. To me, that was fascinating, and that's the place I've been spending a lot of my time lately.
Corey and I are very much interested about the human aspect of AI,
Yeah.
and I know that you're in those conversations too, helping the human get to that level of confidence that they need. Where what all I see and what I hear is a lot of fear, honestly, around AI.
You know, and part of my reaction to that statement is we've kind of seen it before, like, but in a very different level of impact. When in the past, when we moved from individual computers to networked computers, from there to client server, from there to cloud, from there to mobile, jobs changed, jobs were erased, new job categories were open, but always, and there's a disruption of process, the way we come to work with expectations, the way we can be on a team. Almost we have to relearn those things over again when it comes to this kind of major transition, given our world has mainly been working in the technology space. But human disruption on a team is something we know, but we don't always like.
Mm.
And as soon as we can move away from dislike into understanding and then into forward from there into action together as a team, I find that being the best place to try to land and try to get there with good psychological safety, good levels of support. Another big disruption that occurred was the pandemic. And I was involved in a very specific intervention to help people just recognize where they were in the pandemic and recognize it was painful so they could come back to work and do things again in a more focused and beneficial way for everybody. But disruption occurs, and now we're facing the next disruption, and teams have to absorb it.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, well, do you want to go through your predictions as a structure for
Yeah,
this?
I mean, so just so everyone knows, this isn't about Matt Tabor being smart and having predictions for AI because everyone's doing that.
Okay.
It's about Matt Tabor trying to be prepared to be in rooms with humans who are going through this process. So I used AI to help pull together a bunch of recent research by groups I respect,
Yeah.
and I started putting some markers out there to start thinking about it and going there into like what it means for humans on teams. So here's a thought experiment. So let's just pick a time in a structure. Let's say by 2030, dominant pattern in successful organizations will have AI agents or AI autonomously resolving 65% of the tasks. So common tasks we do today will be resolved and decided by an autonomous AI agent or some sort of system. So task-based work starts to pull back. However, that work is done within clearly defined guardrails and governance that humans stabilize and set. So humans are building, managing, being the bosses of these agents and autonomous systems. And the systems that they're working are really clearly defined in guardrails and governance are set. Okay, so that's the starting point, like thesis. Okay.
Great.
Well, what does that mean for people? What does it mean for teams? Well, in my best of worlds, humans will be allowed the time and effort to move upstream and to focus on the more subtle, complex, context rich, psychologically rich questions that truly drive business growth, productivity, thriving cultures. Those are very specific and sometimes hard to tease out questions that I think groups of humans are really powerful at doing well together. The research is clear. Humans coming from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, different experiences together create the highest levels of innovation. Great. Now, can AI be part of that? Sure, but humans should probably own those kinds of conversations around business strategy, around culture, around growth decisions, what truly differentiation is and experience for customers. Those kind of like really, really important questions that drive a business forward every day. Okay, now there's thesis one. Agents do these autonomous tasks. a high percentage. Thesis two is humans are really focused on doing these very important high-end questions and work that actually requires a level of sophistication that humans offer and humans guide. One key statement here, if you want to know the difference between two, is if a judgment is required that is more important or the context behind it outweighs a specific easy transactional output, humans do it. Transactional outputs, AI agents, systems do it. That's the core. Okay, I'm building this so we can kind of get to a series of things I think could play out for teams and for people. All right.
And can I ask you to add in there, what are the skills that the humans need to have? We pretty much understand the power of the technology by now, although I
Yes.
think we haven't seen all of it, but we can predict that. What I want to see, because that's where I see the biggest gap, is how does the human prepare to that level of sophistication that you're talking about?
It's in my mind, I've started to call it, I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. So in my mind, there's not many skills right now. There's one skill that rules them all. Other skills are important,
Yes.
but one skill that rules them all is critical thinking and problem solving.
Yes.
If you do research, you might see in the US and other countries that education systems and results of education and exit exams are dropping dramatically. You might notice if you work with colleagues that because of the way we interact with social and other types of technologies that make our lives easier for us, our daily repetition of solving problems for ourselves has dropped dramatically. So I dare you. In fact, I think it's a great experiment for exercise for anyone to like look at anything you're trying to decide and do the 5 whys. Like
Right.
why this? Okay, now why that? And drill into what the real problem is. Every time I do that for myself, I'm literally focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it starts up here. The shower head's clogged. Actually, the entire water system's messed up and there's no water coming in. It's that level of like, it's a very simple example, but there's a real truth to this. And I challenge all of us to go ahead and do it. Whether you're in our shoes practicing or you're on a team trying to resolve a problem, I think if you're going to interact with an AI agent, you're not just there partnering with it to do work, you're evaluating its work. You're making
Yes.
sure it's working on the right problem statements. Because here's a real interesting thing. It's so easy to create content at work. How often do we go back and pull out bad content, bad information? We
Mhm.
don't.
Yeah.
So now agentic agents are getting better and better at sorting through bad information. However, there's still a lot of bad information if we as humans don't know how to redirect an agent. So for a human being, there's 3 roles I see. There's the boss of the agent, the boss of AI. Think of it as the person who builds, tunes, fixes this, wonderful technology.
And
They're
become the responsible for this agent.
yes, and it's
Mhm.
like they're the boss. So
Yeah.
is the agent doing its work right? How can we make it better? How do we build performance? The second role I'm seeing is an evaluator. My job is to know business context, that outcome we're trying to get to, and be fluent in that, so I can evaluate the information that AI is providing us. Can we go faster? Do we need to slow down? Correction? Do we need to go talk to a friend of mine over there or an agent over there to figure out how to match information together? The evaluator. The third one's what I'm calling like a superhuman contributor. And there's probably better words for that, but if we are super skilled experts and we have super specific expertise we can bring or specializations we can bring, having someone like that on a team that is now AI manager, an evaluator, plus the expert, that's a powerful combination. If you think about that, there's actually a nice growth path for all humans in that model. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of career progression. There's a lot of ability to, if you want to go deep and become like me, I love expertise. Bam, go jump into that role. If you want to become a leader and an organizational, pivot point or decision maker, that boss is a really interesting thing. If you want to become a consultant or someone who specializes, but also has a chance to look across the system, that evaluator role is really kind of juicy. So
Hold on. Help me understand, how does an expert add any value that eventually an agent is not going to do best or be best, right?
I
If I train an agent, eventually isn't that going to become the expert?
it can be, but it can be
Yeah.
within the context in which it was trained. The beautiful thing about the
Yeah.
world of work is it's always changing.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, there was this advent of your business strategy is not done until your external partnerships are involved in your business strategy. So
Right.
that became a big push a couple years ago. It's very powerful. I mean, it's amazingly powerful. And that introduced, 12 to the power of different new connections and different cultures and different contexts and business priorities and technologies and platforms. That became part of it. So I think we're going to continue to see the complexity and growth of business move at a pace where experts who can stay grounded in one particular area will be highly valuable as touch points and coordinators as AI agents are learning and moving around. That's my belief. Maybe I'm projecting my own desire into that belief. It could be, but I do believe there's going to be plenty of room for experts going forward.
Yeah. So that is the vision that is not that far out. 2030 is only 5 years away, less than 5 years away. What does a leader and a team, what do they need to do now to be able to be in that scenario less than 5 years away?
I have a good answer for that. In fact, I prepared one just for you. However, I think it's better to maybe back up and talk about what's going to look like so we can kind of build
Yes.
some. Okay. So,
Paint us the whole picture.
okay. So I already hit the first piece, which is agents do the task and humans do the more subtle, complex, emotion centric and harder to resolve kind of human problems or business problems that require humans. Perfect. A lot of people are saying that one, by the way. It's no
Yeah.
big secret. However, I think the next few are really interesting. If you think about an agent, AI, it's never off. It's always on. It's always accessible, and it can always communicate with other agents. So if you think about one of the biggest struggles we've had at work for as long as I've been at work is this whole idea of working across team or across
Yes.
function who have different priorities, different budgets, and we all want to work together to solve for the big company, but it's very hard sometimes to prioritize the bigger outcome across our functional needs and or personal desires. Agents that can work ubiquitously and transparently across functions inside of teams will massively accelerate that weakness into a strength. So as team members, we can start focusing more on working across and making connections and contextual connections to accelerate something I think is a really critical point.
Yeah.
Past, we've been measured ourselves on tasks, activities completed, and we feel good. We've earned our paycheck because we've completed a task, we got something done, we met a deliverable, the project got completed. With a agent in there doing a lot of the task work for you, what do humans focus on next? What are we allowed to focus on next? What do the business really want us to focus on next? And importantly, our customers, investors, and our employees want. They want outcomes. We want to see things change. We want to have the things we want that we're paying for, that we're paying with our time, our money, our attention. And now humans who have this ability to work across the organization in a seamless way can start creating those outcomes that really are currently held stasis or they're held back by these cross-functional behaviors we've seen in the past. I think it's really cool.
So you're saying, and I see that too. Finally, with agents, we will go across the boundaries of the silos and working within the confinement of different organizations because, agents hopefully most of the time they don't have a history with that person or a history with that leader. And so if we do this work right, which is the work of creating these agents and educating these agents, they are not going to have the human biases. Although, I mean, the humans will create them. So we'll see. We'll see. It's like there's so much that can be said there. But I can see how finally we can remove those boundaries in a much more agile way than happens with the humans. Also, what I heard, you didn't say it specifically, but I heard it in there. You're saying that will free people to, one, focus on what matters, the important business decisions, the connection with stakeholders, absolutely. And then also to focus on relationships.
Yeah.
Like we're freed to
Yeah.
have more time to build those bridges, to build those relationships. Okay, take it from here.
The point you're making is, I mentioned a little bit before, I think it's critical. the ability to build bridges across, build relationships that understand the context of work so we can actually work effectively across these boundaries is real.
Yeah.
We can use, this is where our emotional intelligence becomes such a powerful tool. We can see and we can predict, we can start driving into behavioral patterns as human beings, consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah.
And that's that's an incredible power to discern the most important truths, not look at the things I've been programmed to look at.
This gives me hope, by the way,
It
for all the
should,
people out there that are seriously concerned that I'm going to be out of the job.
I think it's a matter of the sooner we get some of these concepts and structures ahead and working towards them as teams, we, as the humans working inside of the organization with these agents, we shape the agents shape us. If we sit back and do nothing, AI comes and starts shaping us from an organizational top-down perspective, which I've been part of. I've helped teams plan, helped companies plan for that kind of stuff. However, the more active your teams are in engaging with it, the more they shape the outcome, the more some of these ideas can become true because as humans, we want them to be. I'm a big believer in that. And this is one of the other things I think is going to happen is we will be on teams with these agents, these AI systems will be permanent team members.
Mhm.
They won't be leaving. We will be partnering with them. We will have to trust them, know when to trust their insights, when not to. They will have to understand how we position ourselves because the AI boss role has to help them understand that. So it takes this whole layer of trust and it redefines it, expands the definition, not just trust between humans, but trust with AI as a valid input. And how do I trust what you're presenting to me? Again, that goes back to the critical thinking exercises, but it does two things. One, it puts a human being in a position where they can normalize that role. They can say, oh, this is going to now be part of my job going forward. For humans, the act of psychologically accepting the situation they're in is such a powerful moment to express the situation and actually have some level of ongoing acceptance of it. But I think by admitting this is going to be part of our team and start treating it like a team member or as a growing team member, that's the way you start moving. And then this also, to one of your earlier questions, Angela, starts shifting the role of a leader.
Mm.
Leaders are going to be less focused on the immediate hierarchy. And in my mind, they're going to become over time more focused on business outcomes, orchestrating business outcomes across multiple functions and multiple capabilities, helping their team have the experience of adding value to those and completing those outcomes and being healthy as they do it.
Yeah.
So in my mind, team leaders are going from being this kind of what I would consider somewhat archaic system or archaic model. It's imprinted by the hierarchy, that traditional organizational hierarchy that they respond into. And now they're going to have much more leniency and leverage across the organization. So they're going to become orchestrators of organizational outcomes, orchestrators of how their teams contribute to those, and orchestrators of a human experience. And I think that right there is a beautiful step forward. A lot of humans I know would love that job and are perfectly capable for that job.
I got a question for you about that. How do you get to that place at scale with all of these leaders across industries? How do you ensure that these leaders can meet this standard in a fairly uniform way? I don't think that's ever been done in terms of training or an evolution of the role or the structure, because everyone at this moment across industries and their organizations, large and small, are sort of like, okay, well, what's Amazon doing? What are these large companies doing? And then they're implementing their own playbook, or they're taking some other broken playbook. So how do you see this standardizing? Or what's the
Well,
opportunity for it?
I think there's an opportunity just to recognize that we don't know. Step one, we don't know. Step two is, well, what do we think we know? That's why I started doing this research so I could have some anchored ideas to share here and to share with the rest of the work I do out there. And I think it's going to, unfortunately, business is not going to be one holistic community stepping forward at once. It's going to be those who want to have that future, who decide that future is for them, and then they start doing it.
Yeah.
And then by that is how you that's how you start leading for other people to follow. So I think we're going to have some leaders and the rest will be fast followers. And or if you look at this and really think it all the way through, it could be a very bad thing to be left in the dust on.
Yeah.
To be a late adopter in this situation, I'm not sure I'd want to work at that company. So I didn't really answer
Yeah.
your question, but I think having conversations like this, where you have this discussion about what do we want our role of our teams to be? What do we want our organizational capabilities roles to be? What do we want the roles of these AI agents and systems to be? Recognizing that there is a certain level of task that drives the operation of every firm I've ever been at, any firm we've ever been at. There's operational tasks that have to happen. They have to become productive. There's a constant pressure to make them better and better and better, and make quicker decisions around these things. Hey, AI is great for that. There's these really hard truths that you have to put fingerprints on and get really clear on, or else you could miss a moment in a market, a moment with a human being, a moment with a key leader, and that's what humans are really good at. So if we start defining some of these things at a very basic level, and then acknowledging where we're at in that process and making basic plans. And it's going to come down to leaders of teams or leaders of companies saying, let's go. And I think that's where we're at. We're early in this process.
We are. I don't think there's ever a more fitting metaphor or example of building the plane while you're flying it than exactly this moment. We don't even know how the plane works and we're flying it. I I want to go back to what you just said about the hard truth. There's a lot behind that statement from the conversations that you're having these days with these leaders. What are one example or two examples of a hard truth that they don't want to hear?
Leaders don't want to hear from whom? From who? From any.
From you, from someone like you, for example, having your conversation with these leaders.
I think one of them I've run into recently is there's this kind of duality of where we've led ourselves as practitioners of the art of humans and the art of organization,
Yes.
whatever. We had to rotate so deeply into empathy-based practices and serving our people in a very different way post pandemic. And every reaction you ever have in life, anything you do organizationally at scale, you kind of, the pendulum sometimes goes too far and sometimes needs to come back. What I'm recognizing in that whole pendulum swing is not the fact that empathy was played too hard, but the fact that we actually forgot a lot of the basic practices that HR professionals are supposed to do. We allowed ourselves and businesses to fixate on culture and strategy and execution, and that's it. The normal flow, the normal order of operations is strategy, organizational capability prioritization, work prioritization, budgeting, then execution, then like, the back end of how this all comes out. The work environment shows up as a reflection of culture. We skipped the two most important parts of that whole model, and we wonder why people don't have budget. We wonder why people aren't clear about priorities. We wonder why we keep trying to do new things with old tools. Great example of this. I worked with a company not long ago who needed to start doing acquisition of very specific technology. They had no ability to make acquisitions. They haven't done it before. They just hired the first person. In a wonderful conversation after they discussed their strategy of acquisitions, a very smart person, and it wasn't the person they just hired, said, well, wait a minute, can we do this? We want to, but can we? And that was a wonderful conversation and just very easy for me to facilitate. But it ended up being, hey, we have to know what we want to build and how we want to build a capability to do something before we actually start executing it. In a very same room, in a very similar situation, many times in the past, I've heard things like, hey, we need to go start acquiring. Great. Hey, Pat, you're in charge. Come back to us in 2 weeks with your plan. Go start acquisitions for us. Don't worry, we're all behind you. We'll all give you everything you need. You got this, right? And in that one statement, you jump from strategy straight into execution without conversation about capability need, budget need, work prioritization. So then all the leaders out of that room walk away going, great, Pat's got this. I don't need to change a dang thing. So when Pat comes back with asks 2 to 3 weeks later, they have to go through this entire regurgitation of, well, here's why we want to do this. And, oh, well, I don't have that person. You have this person. And that's what leads to noise, confusion, delay, budget, lack of budget clarity that we all deal with all the time inside of businesses. It's because of moments like that. So I believe one of the biggest lessons we can relearn right now is how to go back to some of those very basic things and Corey, back to your question, it's in those basic conversations and questions you have at the top where you start setting out these plans that then can be moved on at scale. So I'm a big believer. Not everyone agrees with me on this topic. I'm a big believer in the most important conversations start at the top. It's human behavior. It's human. It's just what we do. We look up to those who lead us and we want to get direction. That's the human condition. And those people are in the right roles for the right reasons, theoretically, and they get paid enough to go make our decisions. And they can do it. I've seen it done very, very well. So maybe circling back, Corey, to your point, it's about having the conversation there in that kind of a room in a structured way that will get us to that outcome.
And this is it for part one of our conversation with Matt Tabor. He left us with a lot of reflections and a hard truth. Change sticks when the real conversation starts at the top with clear choices and one measure that matters. So this week, pick 2 tasks for an agent, practice with some AI, define one human guardrail, and retire one meeting so that something new can grow. So what can you stop this week so that something new can start? In the next episode, in part 2 of this conversation, we will get practical with Matt, and he will share some KPIs that you can actually use, some visible sponsor cadence, and 2 tiny AI rituals that you can implement. And then he will end up with a simple 90-day plan. If you like today's episode, please share it with your colleagues, with your friends. If there's anything that you want me or Corey to know, please reach out to us. And until then, take care. We'll see you here for part 2. Bye.